we're very happy. We're very happy that you're here with us today. It's the first time that we're doing this because although the IPU has been engaging with parliaments and individual parliamentarians for a long time, when it comes to the UN Human Rights Council and its UPR and the UN Human Rights Treaty bodies, in particular CEDAW, but now also increasingly the other treaty bodies, the CRC, the Human Rights Committee, and others. We have never organized a meeting where we would bring together members of parliament who have had direct exposure to these mechanisms. We've always organized online briefings for parliamentarians who might be part of national delegations, who might contribute to the implementation of the recommendations from these from these mechanisms. But this is a real opportunity for us to hear from you, rather for us to talk to you about what parliaments can do. So it's a real opportunity to share experiences for you amongst yourselves, and for us to learn from you. Now, some maybe practical comments on the meeting itself. As I mentioned, we hope to have an hour and a half to 2 hours for this, depending on how the discussion goes. If you could all kindly keep your video switched on for the duration of the meeting, given that it's such a small meeting, in order for it to be as interactive as possible, we really hope that we can continuously see each other as part of this meeting. There is English and French interpretation. So if you go down to your screen, you can see that that is available as well in French, as I'm speaking now in English, but we don't have interpretation in other than these two languages. So if it's problematic for you to speak in any of these two languages, please point that out to me, and we can also try to help maybe with some other languages if that is useful. I'm thinking in particular of Spanish as well as for Portuguese. With that being said, given that it's a small meeting, we would also like to start off by, in fact, giving everyone an opportunity to very briefly introduce themselves. And when I say briefly, it's really about just stating your name and where you're from, and if you're a member of parliament, because I also know that we have some former members of parliament. So if you can state your name, your function, your current function, and the country you're from. And of course, much later in the program, there will be an opportunity for each one of you to share your experiences with regard to these UN mechanisms. But maybe just to start, if you could introduce yourselves very briefly. So I would just take the participants in the order that they appear on my screen. So starting with Mr. Alasina, please, sir.
Merci bien. Je suis Guiti Lassina. Je suis parlementaire du Burkina Faso. Je suis président de la commission en charge des droits humains au Parlement du Burkina Faso. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur, et merci beaucoup d'être là avec nous. Madame Sophie Kilatse.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sophie Kilatze. I'm a current vice chair of the Committee on the Rights of the Child, and I come from Georgia, and I'm a former parliamentarian and chairperson of Human Rights Committee of the Parliament of Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Buric. We can't hear you. You're muted.
Ne čuje jer je mutirano, utišano. Utišani ste, uključite. Yes, ponovite. My name is Slava Buric. I'm the secretary of the Committee on Human Rights and Freedoms from the Parliament of Montenegro. I was a part of the delegation that participated in Geneva in defending the report of Montenegro for human rights.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kvitsiani.
Hi, good day, everyone. My name is Baya Kvitsiani. I'm the member of Georgian Parliament, and I'm also the deputy chair for the Education and Science Committee. and the chair of the Council for the Protection of the Rights of the Child. It's good to be here, and I wish you all the success for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Al-Halaisi.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having this meeting. My name is Huda Al-Halaisi. I am from Saudi Arabia. I'm a member of the Shura Council, which is the equivalent of the parliament elsewhere. I am member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, have been so for the last 14 years, and I am very honored to be part of this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Jacques du Tchad.
Bonjour à tout le monde, je crois que vous m'écoutez. Vous m'écoutez? Ok. Moi, c'est Dr. Jacques Lawingamay. Je suis le président de la commission chargée des droits humains du Conseil national de transition, qui est le Parlement provisoire en République du Tchad. Bonjour à tout le monde.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur. Et puis, je donne la parole à Madame Farah Saïd. Microphone, s'il vous plaît. You are still muted. Maybe just in the meantime, I'll give the floor to Mr. Mayo.
Of course, thank you. Thank you, and I am very pleased to be here and join with you. I am from Mexico. I'm a former senator of the Republic, and I had the opportunity to be in Geneva, Switzerland in January of this year. So well, glad to be here and to share my thoughts. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. Saidov.
Good morning, good day, good evening for all. I am a first vice speaker of Uzbek parliament, and during the 4 years I worked as a member of EXCOM IPU and the same time vice president of IPU. So it's for me honor participate in this. It's very important event. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Saidov. I see Miss Patasse. You have the floor.
Bonjour tout le monde. Vous m'entendez? Ok. Je suis Marie-Christiane, l'honorable Patasse Marie-Christiane, troisième vice-présidente de l'Assemblée nationale de la République centrafricaine et représentante de l'Union interparlementaire pour les femmes parlementaires de la République centrafricaine et membre du Commission Affaires étrangères en République centrafricaine. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Je vois aussi Madame Maroufova de l'Ouzbékistan.
Good afternoon. I am Marufova Gulnora. I am Senator of Republic of Uzbekistan. Good day. I see you and I listen to you.
Thank you very much. And I see Ms. Gabrieli from Brazil.
Hi, my name is Mara Gabrieli. I'm a senator in Brazil, and I used to be a congresswoman, and I'm here to meet you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. We will start this meeting. The IPU Secretary General would have really wanted to be with you today, but due to prior commitments, that was not possible. But he has left for you a recorded message, which I would like to play now for you. I see we have a technical glitch. I'm just asking my colleagues, Ilya,
Dear members of parliament, dear colleagues and friends, I wish to extend a warm welcome to all of you. Sadly, I am unable to join you for this meeting, but I wanted to express my sincere appreciation for your active involvement in the work of the United Nations human rights mechanisms. As you all know, the IPU and the United Nations have been calling for such increased engagement for some time. And I'm happy to report that in the last few years, we have witnessed ever-growing involvement of parliamentarians such as yourselves in this process at all stages of the reporting and implementation. I'm happy to share that according to our data, the number of parliamentarians who have taken part in delegations to the UN Human Rights Council, all the 5 treaty bodies that are a priority for the Interparliamentary Union, in view of their mandate, has increased fourfold, from 12 parliamentarians in 2018 to 46 parliamentarians in 2023. This news is particularly heartening as the human rights agenda has been facing countless challenges during these times, with worsening conflicts, social divisions, and democratic backsliding in a number of countries in crisis. In this context, greater engagement with United Nations human rights mechanisms by dedicated parliamentarians such as yourselves brings a glimmer of hope that parliaments may play a decisive role in bridging the implementation gap in order to better protect, respect, and fulfill the fundamental rights and freedoms of the peoples of the world whom you represent. How can parliaments make a difference from human rights? Parliaments can help ensure that what these human rights mechanisms do is fully connected to national realities. Human rights are not mere technical matters that can be left in the hands of government representatives and experts alone. Human rights require robust political discussions and decisions. Parliaments can help promote public debate on human rights and seek input from all segments of society. Moreover, they can lend democratic legitimacy to the outcome of that debate and galvanize public support for implementation. Our partners in the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights agree that the Council and UN treaty bodies stand much to gain from such parliamentary involvement. After all, a majority of human rights recommendations cannot be fulfilled without the active involvement of Parliament. For this reason, I invited you to come together today as we wanted to learn from you, the champions of this emerging good practice, to know what your experience in participating in country delegations to UN human rights mechanisms has taught you, how it affected your relationship with other branches of government, and most importantly, what impact it had on the work of Parliament in the field of human rights. It is our hope that this meeting will allow you and the IPU Secretariat to learn from these exchanges so that we can better engage our colleagues from around the world to follow your example to bring human rights closer to reality. Indeed, the yardstick for success is the extent to which the human rights discourse has led to the concrete improvement of people's lives. The Interparliamentary Union is fully committed to working for this purpose with you and your parliaments. I wish you a very successful meeting. Thank you.
With those opening remarks, we now turn to the official program. But before doing that, I also want to acknowledge the presence of Mr. Osoba from Nigeria. So if you could very briefly introduce yourself, sir. Mr. Osoba, you have the floor.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Olumide Oshoba. I'm from Nigeria. I'm the Chairman Committee on Justice. I was an attendee earlier on this year at the UN session. And I really enjoyed the sessions because it taught me a lot. So I'm here today because I plan on coming later on this month to attend the 56th session. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, sir. So we will now start with the first session. There are three parts to this meeting today. The first part is really about zooming in into your participation in one or more national delegations to different UN human rights mechanisms. I know for some of you that meant participating in the national delegation to the UN Human Rights Council, the UPR. For some, this is the CEDAW committee. For others, it's the CRC or the Human Rights Committee or yet other UN human rights treaty bodies. These bodies are different, but they also have a lot of similarities in terms of how they function and how the reporting procedure unfolds. So in this first part, the idea is really to focus on your participation in the national delegation. How did it come about? What was your role in the national delegation? And subsequently, what were your impressions? How could things be maybe organized better next time around in order to allow members of parliament to play a more effective role in the national delegations of your country. So that's the first part. The second part will really focus on implementation. So once the concluding observations or the recommendations from these UN mechanisms have been adopted, what role, as having been a member of your national delegation, what kind of role were you able to play within your parliament to help facilitate the implementation of those UN human rights recommendations? That's the second part of today. And it's maybe a little bit more of a complicated part. We realize this. And the third part is really about how the IPU tries to help parliaments in becoming an effective part of these UN human rights mechanisms. So starting with the first part, we have the pleasure and the honor to have Ms. Farah Said from Djibouti, who will start off the discussion by sharing her experience, having participated in more than one delegation to UN human rights mechanisms. So I think this is of great interest to other participants as well. And once you have shared your experience with us, we also think it would be very useful for all other participants, members of parliament who participated in national delegations, to briefly share with us as well your own personal experience. So, but first of all, Ms. Farah Said, you have the floor. I think you're muted.
Maintenant, vous m'entendez? Bonjour, je vous remercie de m'avoir invité. Je me nomme Kalfoum Farah Saïd, je suis parlementaire de l'Assemblée nationale la République de Djibouti. Djibouti, bon, les parlementaires, la commission a été, comme certains pays, je viens d'entendre qu'il y a des commissions spécifiques de droits humains, sauf que l'Assemblée nationale de Djibouti a inclus le droit humain dans la commission de la législation de l'administration et les droits humains, voilà, depuis 2019. Et avant de participer aux différents examens, les PU, les CDF, il y a eu un long parcours comme des renforcements des capacités pour les parlementaires, sensibilisation, comprendre de quoi il s'agit, pourquoi le droit humain a été inclus officiellement dans cette commission. On a eu des renforcements des capacités d'abord concernant les parlementaires et après, il y a eu des renforcements de capacités avec les collaborateurs de l'Assemblée qui travaillent avec nous et qui nous renforcent lors des travaux sur les droits humains. Et par la suite, on a eu, les parlementaires djiboutiens ont eu le privilège de participer au 4e examen de l'EPI qui s'est déroulé à Genève le 9 juin. Non, le 9 novembre. On a participé avec une délégation composée du comité interministériel d'habitude qui rédige ce rapport. Avant la participation de l'EPU, on a eu des réunions avec ce comité qui nous explique du déroulement, comment les choses se font, et quelles sont les attentes et quelles sont les questions. Il y a des questions déjà préétablies et des questions qui vont être posées sur place. Et on a été, j'ai été parmi les parlementaires qui étaient présents. Il y avait aussi mon collègue Abdelkader Moussa aussi qui était présent. Et, bon, on a suivi ce jour-là, le 9 novembre. On a essayé d'écouter au début, comme en tant qu'observateur, comme c'était la première fois qu'un parlementaire a été inclus dans ces délégations. Et par la suite, les différents représentants des différents pays qui posaient les questions se sont intéressés aux parlementaires. Il nous a posé plusieurs questions, surtout sur les droits de l'enfant, sur les droits des femmes, sur la sécurité sociale, sur plusieurs points très pertinents que le comité interministériel avait préparé aussi de répondre. Il y avait des documents qui étaient en place, qui étaient déjà préétablis, qui répondaient à toutes les questions. Mais pour les parlementaires, c'était plutôt comment ça se passe sur le terrain. Est-ce que tout ça sont les questions qui ont été posées, surtout sur la sécurité, sur le droit des enfants, sur la protection des enfants, sur la sécurité sociale, comment ça se déroule sur le terrain. Parce que normalement, les parlementaires, nous, les parlementaires djiboutiens, souvent, on se déplace dans les localités très éloignées pour vraiment voir comment les choses se déroulent. Je ne sais pas, mais j'ai vu qu'il y avait d'autres parlementaires pays d'Afrique. Je crois qu'ils ont la même expérience que moi, que dans les localités très éloignées, c'est là où le vrai problème se passe. Est-ce que les institutions se déplacent pour pouvoir, pour que la population qui vit dans les endroits très éloignés profite et bénéficie du même système que ceux qui vivent dans la République, je veux dire dans les capitales ou dans les grandes régions principales. Donc, voilà, on a pu répondre, on a pu dire que, voilà, nous, notre rôle, c'était surtout faire des sensibilisations, d'expliquer à la population leurs droits, c'est-à-dire ce qu'ils méritent, ce qu'ils doivent bénéficier, et ce que réellement toute la protection qui doivent bénéficier provenant des différentes institutions, c'est-à-dire du gouvernement, et vice-versa, on a aussi expliqué qu'au niveau du gouvernement aussi, on prépare des réunions pour vraiment souligner. Ça existe, il y a des textes qui sont appliqués, il y a des textes qui ont été votés, il y a des textes qui ont été mis en place. Mais nous, on s'intéresse réellement au suivi de ces textes. Est-ce que ces textes ont été appliqués correctement? Est-ce que les bénéficiaires ont eu le résultat voulu? Voilà, en quelque sorte, donc les différents représentants des pays qui ont posé des questions à la République de Djibouti, au comité interministériel et les parlementaires djiboutiens le 9 novembre, ça se portait souvent sur les sensibilisations et est-ce que le droit humain est respecté aussi dans les zones très éloignées. On a pu répondre, expliquer d'une manière pratique, pas d'une manière expertise comme le gouvernement le fait, c'est-à-dire le comité interministériel, pour eux, c'est trop technique lorsqu'ils répondent à ces questions. Mais nous, on répondait d'une manière simple, comme toujours, pour permettre à la population de nous suivre et de nous comprendre. Et par la suite, cela a suscité une sorte de consolidation avec le membre du gouvernement et on a pu travailler par la suite avec différents gouvernements, différents ministères, comme il y avait aussi l'examen des CEDEF qui était suivi par le PU et ça nous a permis, parce que les PU, l'accès et l'explication et comment on a eu l'accès d'être présent dans, dans ces, dans ces moments-là. On a passé un long parcours parce que déjà le comité intergouvernemental s'est demandé pourquoi les parlements veulent partir avec nous, veulent participer. Il y avait des questions, il y avait des réticences, mais par la suite, ils ont compris qu'en collaborant ensemble, et les choses sont toujours meilleures et sont plutôt faciles à pouvoir avoir une bonne finalité. Et par la suite, on a eu aussi d'autres réunions. Et comme c'est eux-mêmes qui nous ont proposé aussi qu'on soit présents pour le CEDEF, l'examen comme Djibouti aussi a été interpellé pour répondre quelques questions concernant l'examen, le dernier rapport que le pays a présenté pour le CEDEF. Et avant même qu'on soit sur place, lors de cette délégation, parmi ces délégations, on a été sollicité, on a eu plusieurs réunions avec plusieurs représentants du gouvernement pour pouvoir travailler avec eux, poser des questions, voir les vides, les lacunes, pour compléter, pour discuter avec eux sur les questions des MGF, sur les questions de droits des femmes, sur la protection des femmes et filles, sur les avancées que le gouvernement a mis en place et sur les résultats aussi, parce que mise en place des textes, il y a, par la suite, il y a toujours un suivi. Est-ce que ces textes ont été appliqués comme il faut? Est-ce que ces textes ont réellement arrêté les fléaux comme le MGF, comme la violence contre la protection des violences des femmes et filles? Il y a eu un texte qui a passé, un texte très important en 2020 qui protégeait d'une manière globale la protection contre la violence des femmes et filles. L'intervention, ce n'était pas juste au niveau de la police, mais aussi on accompagnait, cette loi permettait l'accompagnement de la victime au niveau médical, au niveau judiciaire et au niveau policier. Ça facilitait en quelque sorte la victime de faire facilement la procédure pour porter plainte, pour lui faciliter, parce qu'on a remarqué qu'il y avait eu beaucoup de réticences, beaucoup de victimes étaient réticentes de porter plainte. Je suis rentrée directement dans le thème. Et après qu'on avait eu plusieurs réunions et on a aussi eu plusieurs ateliers de sensibilisation. Et par la suite, On a été parmi la délégation qui devait se présenter devant le CEDEF. Et bon, on a participé, on a entendu beaucoup de questions posées. On a essayé de travailler avant d'être le jour même devant les consultants. On a eu d'autres réunions aussi pour pouvoir répondre à ces questions, pour pouvoir détailler et voilà, chercher les lacunes et souligner comment améliorer ces lacunes et tout ça. Et lors de la CEDEF, ça s'est très bien passé. Le comité, la délégation a pu répondre presque à toutes les questions qui ont été posées. Et il y a eu des recommandations. Et après, après le CEDEF, on a encore eu d'autres travails après. On a eu des groupes de travail. On a organisé quelques groupes de travail pour pouvoir préparer et répondre à ces recommandations avec le membre du gouvernement. Et si je peux résumer, c'est en quelque sorte, c'est comme un comité d'évaluation qui évalue d'une manière générale le pays sans séparation du pouvoir, c'est-à-dire sans dire que le Parlement sont de côté et le gouvernement sont de côté. Bon, l'expérience que j'ai eue avec les PU et le CEDEF, c'est quelque sorte de nous envoyer un message, de travailler ensemble, un travail d'équipe, de consolidation pour pouvoir répondre à toutes les questions touchant le domaine des droits humains. Voilà, en quelque sorte, ce que j'ai compris et l'expérience que j'ai eue pendant ces deux interventions que j'ai eues de l'EPU et de CEDEF. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Ms. Farah Said. Before we start the discussion, I also recognize the presence of Ms. Malik from Pakistan. And I would also like to ask you very briefly if you could introduce yourself, who you are, and where you're from. Madam, you're muted. You're muted. Your microphone is switched off.
Good evening. This is Shaista Pervez from Pakistan. I am a member of the National Assembly, and this is my third tenure. And I have been as member of the Women Parliamentary Caucus, which is across party lines. I have been the secretary of that, and I have been at the Human Rights Forum in Geneva in 2017, and I have had a chance of interacting with Human Rights Committee in the Parliament also. And my forte, my interest is to work on gender issues, on child rights, and on minorities. And I'm from Pakistan, and this is my introduction.
Thank you very much, Madam. So now for this first part, given that it's a small group and given that you've all had personal experiences in different ways, sometimes having participated in one national delegation or in the case of Ms. Farah Said in two, to share your experience. And if I may, I would like you to focus on three or maybe four particular aspects of your personal participation. I would like to ask each of you, and if it's okay with you, I will actually just mention your name so that everyone has an opportunity to share their personal experiences. I would like you to tell us how your participation in the national delegation came about. How did this happen? Was it something that you asked for? Is it because of the specific functions in your parliament? Is it because you found out about this mechanism and thought it was important to be part of it? Did the government ask you? So the first question, how did you become a member of the national delegation? The second question is, what was your role in the national delegation? Were you there more as an observer, or were you an active participant? Were you given a specific assignment, an official assignment? Did you present the report, or did you respond to questions from committees or the Human Rights Council? How was this organized with the government? So the second question is, what was your specific role? And thirdly, what was your impression of the dialogue that you saw unfold between the UN Human Rights Mechanism and your national delegation? What was your impression? And then maybe a last question, which gets us again back to the very start of all this, is that once the delegation was put together, well, first of all, there is a national report that is being prepared. It would also be of interest to us to find out if when that report was being prepared, if you personally or Parliament as such or specific parliamentary committees were knowledgeable of the preparation of that national report, were maybe consulted on the report, were maybe had an opportunity to review it together with others. So that's a fourth question. First question is, how did you come to become part of the national delegation? Second, what was your role? Third, what was your impression of having participated in the national delegation? And fourth, your role or the Parliament's role in the drafting or the consultation on the national reports. Now, I acknowledge the person who is here today with us, who has, I would say, the widest experience in all of this is clearly Mr. Saidov, because Mr. Saidov, it's hard to think of a UN human rights mechanism and a national delegation in which Mr. Saidov has not played a part. So maybe to start this discussion, Mr. Saidov, if you could give your perspective on some of these questions, that would be wonderful.
Thank you so much, moderator. Once again, good afternoon, good evening, dear friends. I want to say about briefly my personal experience, and secondly, best practice of Uzbek Parliament, who participating during the preparation, discussion, consideration in the treaty bodies, and after implementation, the recommendations, human rights bodies of UN. I participated in this process since 1990. During the 25 years, I participated in a discussion and in the consideration our periodical reports in the treaty bodies. I participated in during the consideration our 4 reports are under the UPR, 4 reports. The last periodical report to UPR we presented last year in November. And I participated in presentation, consideration, more than 40 periodical reports to 6 treaty bodies, 6 treaty bodies. I may indicated 4 stages of participation Uzbek Parliament in preparation. In first stage, the preparation periodical report of the Republic of Uzbekistan. Parliament is very actively participated during the preparation periodical report. And we 5 years ago, we established joint parliamentary commission on human rights issues. This joint parliamentary commission considered the draft of periodical report after the adopting by Parliament periodical report, but through Minister of Foreign Affairs, we sent this periodical report to Uzbekistan to Human Rights Council or treaty board or UN treaty board. This is the first stage. The second stage, members of Parliament included in the governmental delegation. Each time, I was elected 6 times to Uzbek Parliament. 6 times for this during the 25 years, I actively participated during the consideration our periodical reports in treaty bodies or Human Rights Council. Why participate the deputies? Because many of recommendations of Human Rights Council and treaty bodies regarded the parliamentary activity. For example, the committees or human rights recommended ratification some international agreements, or recommended adopting the UNO laws regarding his competence. This is the second. The third stage, after the consideration our periodical report, the government and delegation and member of this delegation MP present the recommendations of Human Rights Committee to Parliament. This is the third stage. And fourth stage is a more important. This is a follow-up principles. And Parliament, this parliamentary commission was adopted national plan of action of recommendations, treaty bodies or Human Rights Council. So more, and during the 3 or 4 years, Parliament played a great role for monitoring, authorize the realization of recommendations of treaty bodies. This fourth stage, and this joint parliamentary commission plays a great role for monitoring the realizations of Human Rights Council. And one of the main directions, we translated and published the main handbooks of IPU in national language, and we disseminate among the parliamentarians. We up to date we translated more than 5 main handbooks of IPU. For example, the last handbook, the Gender Responsive Lawmaking Handbook for Parliamentarians, number 33. In this case, I want to express our gratitude to IPU and UN Women for recognizing the contributions of Uzbek Parliament. Through collaborative initiatives like this handbook, we are glad to be of help and provide examples of successful utilization of CEDAW as basis for practical law passed in Uzbekistan to protect rights and freedoms of women. This is me. And lastly, I want to say, by the initiative of President of Uzbekistan, 2 years ago, the Assembly of General of United Nations was adopted special resolution on strengthening the role of national parliaments on implementation on realization SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. And this is a good platform, legal platform, who formed under this resolution. I want to say it's very interesting for all parliamentarians use this resolution of United Nations. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Saidov. It's in fact even more impressive than what I thought in terms of your own personal involvement. If I understood you correctly, you've been involved in 40 different national reports to six treaty bodies, as well as the UN Human Rights Council.
Yes,
that is really really impressive. So I don't want this to turn into a competition, because I think that's very hard to beat as a record. But in order to move to other personal experiences, let me ask Ms. Kvitsiani from Georgia, what has been your personal experience? And if you could stay with the 4 questions that I mentioned, because for the second part, we will really try to dig a little bit deeper into the implementation of the recommendations.
Yes, I will try my best to be very brief. Yes, thank you again for the invitation, for this opportunity. We truly appreciate, and our states, member states, we always need assistance, always need consultancy. So thank you for making time, and we truly appreciate that. So how I got involved in and became the part of delegation, as Ms. Sofia Kiladze mentioned, she's the ex-member of the Parliament of Georgia, and she was one of the main. She acted as one of the main roles for developing the Code on the Rights of the Child, and also the Council on the Protection of the Rights of the Child. Therefore, the Human Rights Council, the Human Rights Committee, is always invited to these UN, as you know, as a member of state. But the rights of the child was according to this Ms. Sophia's wish, she also managed to extend the invitation for the Rights of the Child Council, and this is how I got involved and participated in the delegation. However, the process was very interesting because we were very much hands-on. It was a very much hands-on process in developing the draft. So the human rights, the state, we have the state treaty for, not treaty, the state party, or I'm not sure how it's called. Yeah, it's the Office for the Prime Minister, and there's this division for the human rights. And they organized this platform where the government side and the parliamentarian side was all included and involved in the draft, reporting the draft for the periodic report. So we had all these divided all the questions that were possibilities that there might be asked. So we had it divided in different sections. To the appropriate entities. And so we had developed our own versions of the possible questions. And when we had this, we had several meetings where we had this sort of, we got all these information together. So we were pretty much very well organized in terms of, we knew who was in charge of which division and which direction if the questions came up. So when we attended the committee CRC in Geneva, it really helped us in terms of, there's this preparation for 15 minutes and the questions are divided. So everybody was very much alert and very much aware of who should speak on what a subject. So I was involved as well because there were questions regarding the legislation, regarding the ongoing situations about several cases. So I had my questions, and I was also delivering several answers to that. So I'm glad that the sort of the review and the impression that we made there was pretty positive. Even at the end of the session, they were very much expressive and very positive, and we look up to these recommendations very much because that's our kind of the guideline that we want to use as a guidance to improve the situation in the parliament or in the government. So thank you very much again.
Thank you very much. I don't know if Ms. Sophie Kilatze, I know you're here in this meeting in sort of wearing two different hats, both, well, first and foremost as a member of the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child, but also, of course, as a former Georgian member of parliament, very active in human rights and also very actively involved in the work of these UN human rights mechanisms. Would you like to add something?
Yeah, thank you, Rohia. Hello, everyone, once again, and thank you very much for organizing this very important event, because I think to share experience from different angles, it helps always and helps us also to take some points and to just enhance human rights protection. And thanks to Ms. Baya for introducing in very details the experience of Georgia and how the CRC, where the state party Georgia was recently in May, she presented it, how it works in Georgia internally, so to say, how parliamentarians are involved. What I can add, and as Rohia has mentioned, I bear two hats now as a former parliamentarian, former chairperson of Human Rights Committee of Georgia, but also the current vice chair of the Committee on the Rights of the Child. I think this gives me also a unique possibility to see this issue from two different points, as a state representative, but also as a member of insider or in human rights treaty bodies. And what I can say is Georgia has a very important experience, what Ms. Baya has mentioned recently regarding the child rights, but in broader sense in human rights issue, that the system in Georgia is established, how the parliament is involved in all these 4 stages, what Rohia has mentioned recently, from very beginning to the end. And it is fixed in a systemic way, defined by the law. And I think this is one of the most important things, that it does not depend on goodwill of some governments or goodwill of some ministries, but it's fixed in the law that the parliament, once the international obligations, and now I'm speaking about the human rights reports, as a part of international obligation of Georgia, it is brought to the parliament, and drafting process where the parliament is obligatory involved in, and then it comes in the discussion stage within the parliament, where everyone, and in Georgia we have very open parliament, very transparent, where each member of society can attend the meetings, the discussions in the committee. So everyone can participate in those discussions, and it increases, of course, the transparency. And the next stage is the participation of parliamentarians, and Ms. Baya was recently for CRC, but also the chairperson of Human Rights Committee, and myself as well was involved, and when I was in the parliament as a member, as a chairperson of Human Rights Committee, obligatorily, so to say. So this involvement is always also very active. It's not passive involvement, just to sit there and do nothing, but as Ms. Baya has mentioned once again, and in 2017, when I was participating as a member of parliament, it was the same. We were actively involved also as a part of the delegation. And the next stage is, once the recommendations are fixed, so to say, then how we see the recommendations are implemented at the national level. So it is again, the parliament is again very much involved in this process. So it means that the parliament asks the questions to the government and oversees how those recommendations are involved. And this is also a part of routine work of the parliament. And then the last stage is that the conclusions. The parliament can give the recommendations to the government, how they should better perform when it comes to the recommendations. So this is the very cycle of this where I was honored to be a part of. But another important thing is, and now I can bring my perspective as vice chair of the Committee on the Rights of the Child, when I participated in the discussions in the CRC, I was so excited about the work of CRC that I have decided to move to the international level from the parliament, and I have changed this, my working environment, so to say, and now I was second time re-elected in the CRC. So this is something what is very important, I think, because I have brought also in the CRC the perspective of the national experience. And Ruhia might agree with me that together we brought the issue of parliament with the support of Martin, Ruhia, Akio. We brought this perspective of the parliaments, and that the CRC and IPU work now together to move child rights forward. I think this is something very special, and maybe the result of our joint work, joint collaboration, and how treaty bodies can be involved in the work of parliaments and vice versa. So I'm really glad that I had this experience and this very close work and cooperation with IPU, and that the CRC is now one of treaty bodies, or the second treaty body, where IPU has its, how to say, systemic work, like we do many things together. And I would like to especially also thank Ilya, who I see, who is also co-organizer of this very important event. And thank you very much. I hope my experience could help a little bit.
Thank you very much to both of you for sharing the Georgian experience, and of course for you, Sophie, this is wearing those two different hats, and it's interesting there as well to hear how you can put yourself in the shoes of the other side of the delegation coming before the committee, but also what it's like to be sitting on the committee itself and to see it from that perspective. For me, the idea is still for everyone to speak. So I've seen that Ms. Buric, you have asked for the floor. I would certainly want to give the floor to everyone to share their experiences and go a little bit between regions. And but Ms. Buric, you would like to intervene now?
Yes, if possible.
Please go ahead.
Dear participants of the meeting, it's my pleasure to greet you on behalf of the Committee on Human Rights and Freedoms of the Montenegrin Parliament and on my own behalf. Let me use this opportunity to thank to the IPU for hosting this exceptionally important meeting. I believe that it is important for all MPs and staff to be thoroughly knowledgeable about the possibilities of parliamentary participation in the UPR process. Therefore, thank you for organizing this event, because this is very important in order to have the necessary continuity. Due to the time, I will be very brief. Let me tell you something about the role of our committee when it comes to the UPR process. And I will focus on the fourth UPR cycle and the consideration of the report on the human rights in Montenegro for the period 2018-2022, which was considered in the United Nations Council for Human Rights in Geneva in May last year. This was the first time for the representatives of the Parliament of Montenegro to be present and to participate in the presentation of the report on the state of human rights in Montenegro. And let me tell you that this was a recommendation by the IPU in order to strengthen the role of our committee and the role of the Parliament when it comes to the UPR, and also to strengthen our participation in drafting and presenting the report within the UPR process. The delegation of Montenegro was composed of all the branches of our Parliament, and it was headed by our Minister of Human and Minority Rights. And there we participated in the meeting of the Council of the United Nations, where the said report for our country was presented within the fourth cycle of the UPR. On that occasion, we presented our progress, our obligation, but also our commitments when it comes to the human rights and freedoms. I also believe it is very important to emphasize, in order to have the proper preparation for the UN Council meeting, it is very important for us to have the advisor of the UN for human rights who hosted two preparatory meetings for the members of the Montenegrin delegation in late April and early May last year. These meetings were very significant for the entire Montenegrin delegation, and they helped us to be properly prepared for the UN Council meeting for the human rights. Due to the fact that the chair of our committee was not able to take part in this meeting, in this sitting in Geneva, and according to his approval and approval of our Secretary General, I was the one to participate in the meeting of the working group of the Council of the UN for Human Rights, where I delivered my intervention on the electoral legislation, and also my advisor was with me. Let me tell you that when it comes to the national report on human rights in Montenegro, its preparation required certain consultations by the representatives of the state bodies, the parliament, the National Institution for the Protection of Human Rights and Freedoms, civic society, and the UN. During the interactive dialogue of the working group of the UN Council for the Human Rights, 87 delegations gave their statement. Montenegro received a total of 247 recommendations, and Montenegro accepted 222 out of these recommendations, and many of them are underway, some have been implemented, and some have been left to be additionally considered. After this, the government of Montenegro, in its session of July 2023, had adopted a position or opinion with regard to the conclusion and recommendation with regard to the national report on the state of human rights in Montenegro for the period 2018-2022. In this document, Montenegro explained that out of the 7 recommendations that had been left for additional consideration, it declined 6 and explained why. The adoption of the report on the state of human rights in Montenegro happened in October 2023 during the 54th session of the Council of Human Rights, where the head of our mission to the UN took part. After the adoption of the report, we started preparing our national action plan for implementing this recommendation. The working team drafting the action plan is composed of the representatives of all the responsible bodies, and we are planning to adopt the midterm and after that the long-term action plan for implementing the recommendation received in the 4th cycle of the UPR process. In the previous 2 months, we had several meetings of the working group tasked for drafting the action plan for implementing recommendations from the UPR process, bearing in mind that this recommendation, I believe that this Parliament will have an active role in implementing them, both when it comes to its legislative role, but also when it comes to its oversight role. Also, the plan of activity of our committee for 2024 includes the consideration of the report of the working group of the Council of the United Nations for the Human Rights on the report on the state of human rights in Montenegro within the UPR. The committee, in line with its jurisdiction, will give its contribution in this way as well. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Buric, for having shared the experience of Montenegro. I see 2 hands that are up. And as suggested, I would like to give the floor to everyone who is part of this meeting to share their personal experience. I know that we have now passed the first hour of the 2 hours that we have at our disposal. I see Mr. Lassina from Burkina Faso and Dr. Jacques from Chad. And I also see Mr. Osoba from Nigeria who have asked for the floor. And also Ms. Pervais from Pakistan. So I will take everyone in that order, and I also see Ms. Alaisi from Saudi Arabia wishing to take the floor. So I would like to proceed in that order, and with the requests for you to really focus on your participation in the national delegation, on the basis of the questions that I asked, and if you could be as brief as possible, bearing in mind that we still have a second part of this meeting and a third part as well. So over to you, Mr. Lassina.
D'accord, merci également. Merci de m'avoir donné la parole. Je suis du Parlement du Burkina Faso, comme je l'avais dit précédemment. Le Parlement du Burkina Faso a participé au mécanisme EPU. Et d'ores et déjà, nous avions participé en tant que membre de la commission parlementaire en charge des droits humains. Et c'est moi-même qui étais de la partie. Notre participation a été active dans la mesure où nous avons livré une déclaration du Parlement et sur non seulement sa participation à la mise en œuvre des recommandations que le gouvernement accepte, mais également l'engagement du Parlement à faciliter la mise en œuvre des recommandations que le gouvernement a acceptées. Parce que, comme vous le savez, il y a des recommandations qui nécessitent des réformes législatives. Et dès que le Parlement est là, dès le début, on voit dans quel esprit la recommandation a été émise. C'est plus simple de faire comprendre aux autres députés la nécessité d'aller dans tel ou tel sens pour faciliter la mise en œuvre d'une recommandation. Donc, vous comprenez que notre participation a été très active. Maintenant, relativement au rapport, d'abord, pour ce qui est du rapport que le gouvernement a présenté, dès lors que le rapport a été rédigé au plan national, il a été validé d'abord par le Parlement. Donc, le rapport a été présenté aux députés de la commission en charge des droits humains. Les députés ont donné leur onction avant que le rapport ne soit transmis. Donc, les députés participent à l'élaboration du rapport à travers les amendements qu'ils apportent au rapport. Et comme je l'ai dit, les députés participent également à la présentation, comme moi-même j'ai participé. Et après l'EPU, nous avons eu une réunion au niveau national qui a regroupé et le Parlement, et le gouvernement, et les ONG et associations qui interviennent dans le domaine des droits humains. Et l'ensemble des recommandations a été présenté lors de ces séminaires publics. Et nous avons décidé des recommandations que nous pouvions accepter et mettre en œuvre. Et chaque partie s'est engagée à travailler à la mise en œuvre des recommandations qui ont été acceptées. Au niveau également de la commission en charge des droits humains, nous travaillons à faire un suivi à travers l'interpellation des différents ministres concernés pour qu'ils nous disent à quel niveau se trouve l'effort de mise en œuvre de telle ou telle recommandation. Donc, à ce niveau, nous élaborons ce que nous appelons des questions orales avec débat, de sorte que le ministre concerné vienne devant la plénière, il présente la question et dit comment est-ce qu'il s'y prend pour mettre en œuvre la recommandation, et les autres députés ont l'occasion de lui poser des questions, de lui faire des suggestions, et c'est ainsi que nous participons à la mise en œuvre des recommandations. Donc, grosso modo, c'est ce que je pouvais dire par rapport à l'expérience de la participation du Burkina Faso à la mise en œuvre des recommandations issues de l'EPI, et je vous remercie. Comme vous avez demandé d'être bref, je vais donc m'arrêter là. Merci donc.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur. Je donne ensuite la parole à Dr Jacques du Tchad.
Merci beaucoup, madame, de m'avoir passé la parole, monsieur. Moi, je vais répondre à vos trois questions. Comment j'ai découvert l'EPU? Quel est le rôle que je joue? Quelle est mon impression? Et si j'ai participé à la préparation du rapport. Alors, comment j'ai découvert l'EPU? J'étais élu au Parlement du Tchad en 2011 et en ma qualité de juriste, le Parlement m'a mandaté de travailler avec le gouvernement sur certains aspects juridiques en ce qui concerne les droits humains. Et c'est à partir de là que j'ai découvert l'EPU. Puisque j'ai participé à la rédaction du rapport, immédiatement, on m'a mis dans la délégation qui va à Genève pour défendre ce rapport. Et en ce qui concerne le rôle que je joue, dès que je suis arrivé à Genève, j'ai joué un rôle même d'acteur, puisque je présentais généralement les rapports dans les parties qui concernent la mise en œuvre des lois en lien avec les droits humains. Donc, je joue un rôle majeur dans la présentation du rapport. Pour preuve, on était à Genève en 2024, ici en février, où j'ai présenté une partie du rapport, puisque nous étions avec plusieurs d'autres Tchadiens qui appartiennent à différents secteurs. Donc, moi, j'avais présenté la partie qui concerne comment le Tchad, qui est en transition, doit revenir à l'ordre constitutionnel. Donc, cette partie, c'est moi qui l'ai présentée. Mon impression, j'étais très, très impressionné, puisque pendant la présentation du document, j'étais témoin oculaire de mon Parlement dans les efforts que le gouvernement est en train de faire dans la mise en œuvre des lois votées par nous-mêmes au Parlement. Et là, moi-même, j'ai été témoin les appréciations que les autres pays apportent et selon ce que nous avions présenté, les autres pays ont donné des orientations et des recommandations. Ma participation m'a permis aussi de partager mon expérience avec les stratégies que nous avions adoptées au Tchad pour élaborer soit les lois ou bien adopter les lois en lien avec les droits humains. Donc, ces bonnes pratiques, ça m'a permis d'échanger avec beaucoup d'autres parlementaires qui étaient présents en février 2024 ici. Est-ce que je participe à la rédaction du rapport? Je suis l'un des acteurs principaux de la rédaction de nos rapports. Et c'est pour cela que je participe souvent. Et d'ailleurs, d'ici le 1er juillet, je serai à Genève pour discuter pour les dernières parties pour l'adoption de notre rapport que nous avions présenté en février. C'est pour dire que j'ai une très, très bonne impression. Je suis un acteur, l'un des acteurs principaux de la rédaction. Donc, voilà ce que je peux dire pour l'instant en attendant la deuxième partie. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur. Je donne maintenant la parole à monsieur Osoba. Mr.
Thank you very much. I bring greetings from the Nigerian Parliament. Let me appreciate this organization of this deliberation. It's very timely and important. I'll go straight to the 4 questions. How did I come about attending the IPU UPR? I felt we in the Nigerian Parliament, the 5 gender bills have been talked about so much that were not passed. So I felt that gender bills and human rights are one and the same. They are intertwined. So I felt that I should attend and have a feel of the UPR. On the second one, did I come as an observer? I initially came as an observer. But while I was observing, questions were asked about the 5 gender bills, and I had to then answer because I was part of the 9th Assembly, we're in the 10th Assembly right now, and we have started the constitutional review and amendments, and we're planning on taking those 5 gender bills again, so we could see how the 5 gender bills could be passed in this assembly. The impressions I had, I believe that parliamentarians are very important to the drafting of human rights bills and gender bills. And in that case, I feel that parliamentarians should be totally involved in the periodic reviews. And lastly, did I engage in the report drafting? We had various meetings and deliberations that eventually came up with the final draft. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Ms. Pervaiz from Pakistan. I think your microphone is muted, ma'am. That's still the case. There should be a button all the way down to the left is where I have it.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me now? Hello?
All
okay.
good.
Thank you very much for this. And I, once again, hello to everybody from Pakistan. Why I was selected was one, that I was a member of the Human Rights Committee in the Parliament, and I was hands-on job. Because as a member, I was in direct contact with the people of the constituencies, and I knew what the issues were and what was happening at the grassroots level. So that was the reason why I was selected, and I was an active participant when I attended the this periodical review report. So as my first, the impression was really good. It was a great learning experience. And once the gaps were identified, and one part was very important, that I was able to explain to the Human Rights Committee that Pakistan, as viewed, that it's globally a single religious and cultural identity, the reality within is far more intricate, and we have, different provinces, and all have distinct, diverse cultural, linguistic, religious, traditional, and economic differences. So, it was a very progressive sort of interactive sessions we had, that I could explain to the world also that with all these diversities, with all the issues at the grassroots level, we were able to move forward and move according to the human rights requirements by the UN. And secondly, the dialogue we had was really good, and I really learned a lot through that, and I could see and understand how the world was moving forward with their differences, with all their issues, with all their problems. And one thing I would like to mention here, that as a parliamentarian, my role is, because I represent the people, to have acts which can affect their daily living and which can improve and give them a right to a respectable and just social justice I can provide them. But here in Pakistan, in 2012, by an act of the parliament, an independent commission was formed, which is known as the National Commission for Human Rights. And now this is a totally independent commission which monitors the acts which are being enacted by the parliament, how we implement them, how we monitor them. This is a super body which is now monitoring what the parliament passes. And, they've just had a periodical report is being submitted, in which they have given all the report independently, how we are working, how work is in progress in Pakistan. So I have a lot to say, and I feel that these sort of meetings we have, these are good because one, it gives a very deeper sense of understanding between the provider and the user, both. And this is how we can move forward. And it was for me a great experience. And I treasure it till today. That was in 2017 that I visited, and I still treasure it. And I'm happy that I represented Pakistan and made the people sitting there realize that how, with all our difficulties, with all our issues, with all our problems, we were making programs. Because one, we have issues like we are not that educated, which education plays a very important role. Then we have a very major issue that we have. I will just give me a few minutes, that we have cultural diversity in our country also, because we have 5 different provinces and linguistic differences are there, religious sects are there, because and our clergy plays a very, very important role. And then we have traditions and cultures, because we have been part of we have been a colony with the British also. We're living with the Indians also. The Hindus have a great impact on our cultural traditions. And then there is that economic disparity which exists. So with all these issues, I am very proud, and I am still want to say that we are making progress, and we have got category A by an independent when our reports were submitted this year by National Commission for Human Rights. It was an A we got, so that is a good something for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for sharing that. I now turn to Ms. Al-Helaisi from Saudi Arabia.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us and benefiting from this kind of a discussion, which is definitely very important. So briefly, I will try to answer those 4 questions that you asked. How did our participation take place? That is a very important question, and we must remember that reforms have extended across legislative, judicial, executive, and procedural levels, addressing all human rights and related issues, and therefore it was very important to ask people and involve stakeholders and participate, let them participate at this high-level meetings because they represent the different entities that are relevant to the issues that are being discussed. So regarding our Shura Council, 2 members of the Shura Council represented the government in the sense that one of us, my colleague, was from the Human Rights Commission, I am from the Foreign Affairs Commission, and we both attended all the meetings prior to our arrival in Geneva, as well as during our time before the actual meeting in Geneva. So it was definitely a team's work. It was extremely important that we compared notes, that we shared the questions that were asked by different nations. And we did so not only as responses on an oral level, we definitely participated in the writing of the report. So were we observers or were we active players? No, we were active players. We had a lot to say. What I was very much impressed by was the fact that we really worked together as a team to make sure that the report came out as best as possible, as honestly as possible, and as transparently as possible. And I think that those factors were very important to all of us, because it would have been futile to be part of such a delegation and pretend that all is well, or that all human rights have been covered. Having said that, I do have to say that the connection between the Shura Council and the Human Rights Commission is extremely strong. What takes place on a government level for the changes of our laws are immediately connected to the Human Rights Commission in the kingdom. The mechanisms are taken the UPR mechanisms are taken very seriously by the kingdom, and we seek to achieve, we are very determined to achieve, I have to say, the global standards that we need to respond to, so that we can actually achieve the requests and the recommendations from the United Nations Human Rights Commissions. The interesting thing is that 85%, and we're very proud of this number, 85% of what was asked by different nations of Saudi Arabia to change during not so much the last 4 years, but the previous 3 cycles that have been changed. So that means that we have, thanks to Vision 2030 and the reforms that are taking place in the country today. So that means that we have about 450 recommendations that have been implemented in the kingdom. And it is something that we are very proud to have had achieved so far. We are still working on the other issues. If I do have something to say, if I may, actually 2 comments. The first one was that when we were actually in the meeting, the comments by some of the countries that were made showed that they had not read the reports that came from Saudi Arabia, which was very sad, because it just made us have to repeat everything that had already changed, which they asked us to change, and they had already taken place in the country. That's my first comment. The second comment is the fact that I think that too often, when looking at different nations, we tend to look at it from a particular lens, not taking sufficiently into consideration the fact that each of these countries are on the way to changes and to reforms, that sometimes it takes time, that changes do not take place from one day to the next as if it's through a magic wand. I think that as far as I know, we are all for human rights, whether it is considering children, women, what have you, and we're all working towards that. But unfortunately, we have to be quite honest with ourselves and say, yes, there are too often too many old traditions that need to be erased so that we can go forwards more as a team. And I think that this is where the IPU can play a very important role by taking into consideration the fact that as we are moving forwards, we need to learn constantly about how to change certain things and have the stakeholders, the important stakeholders playing the role of societal change, play that role hand in hand with government policies and legislations. I don't want to take more of your time. I think that I briefly said what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this candid perspective. I turn to Ms. Tamayo from Mexico.
Thank you very much, Mr. Huizenga. I am Yadira Tamayo, and I am a former president of the Human Rights Commission of the Senate of the Republic. And in that representation, I went to Geneva, to the UPR. And well, that's first question. And why I wasn't, that's why I was invited, because I think, politics to make human right policy. So this thing about parties and which party is governing and all that, it's in the game also between this work about representing a state and being in the UPR. So next question is, which was my impression? Well, I was very excited to be there, to be in that in that room 20 of the Palace Nation of Geneva, and below that Sistine Chapel of the 21st century. It was very impressive for me, and to see all how was designed, all the chairs and all that low voice for the microphones in order to the translations, and not like in the national parliaments there we yell a lot or do different things. So yeah, I was impressive with that. I also called my attention a lot the most undiplomatic, the very respectful form that the representatives of different countries made their recommendations, and very efficient. In 1 minute, you have to say 2 or 3 things, so I appreciate that. So I also see how in this case about the report. Well, our presence there as a state were arranged from the federal executive, from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and they concede to me to talk there. I don't remember 5 or 10 minutes, but I really appreciate it because I can talk there and make a statement as a part of the Mexican state. Well, in that exercise, we have 218 recommendations. They are sensitive and in the voice of the reports of national and international organizations. Here in Mexico, we have an alarming human rights crisis. That was about 6 months ago, and yeah, when we have that UPR and the report in the following days, the press talk a lot about human rights and made a lot of criticizing for this government and for the others also, because it's not a problem of this government, but a lot of years ago. So, but then we had an election. We have 3 weeks ago, we had federal elections, and we vote for another president. We have and the voters, even about that crisis and all those themes, they choose to, with a lot of votes, with a wide range of votes, they decide to vote again for that party. So that sometimes say, well, what is happening? Even we are living this crisis of human rights. Voters or the people like to refrain their trust to this government and to this party. So there are questions that are over the table, and we all know that this problems of human rights, they are not local. They're even more and more. They are global. They are complex problems. They are difficult problems, and we cannot solve them from the local, all of them. We need from these exercises of the UN, the IPU, this exercises, these mechanisms as the UPR, and I think this intention of these countries and all and one of you being here, and IPU inviting us to be here and pay attention to this exercise are very, very important and can very, very help us to solve these problems. So I really appreciate this space, and thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us, Ms. Tamayo. I'm looking at still experiences from Brazil and from Central African Republic. would you like to share your perspective? Ms. Gabrieli, Ms. Mara Gabrieli, would you like to share your personal experience? Or Ms. Patase from Central African Republic?
Hi, thank you very much, Mr. Wong, for this opportunity. I want to say hello for everybody and good afternoon. I would like to thank the Interparliamentary Union for this opportunity and all the parliamentaries present here. I want to describe myself for who has vision impairments. I am a white woman with green eyes and shoulder-length light brown hair. I'm wearing a green dress and I have a large painting of a landscape on my back. From 2019 to 2022, I served my first term as an expert at the UN Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and I was recently re-elected with the support of the state's parties for the next term from 2025 to 2028. In my 17 years as a parliamentarian in Brazil, I have ensured that all approved projects and laws are inclusive and comply with the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. During my time as a counselor in São Paulo, I worked with Brazilian Congress to ratify the convention in Brazil. And as a federal deputy, as a congresswoman, I authored the final text of the Brazilian law on the inclusion of persons with disability, which regulated the convention and its optional protocol in Brazil, the Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities of the United Nations. I promoted broad accessibility by creating a virtual platform and fully translating the bill into Brazilian Sign Language, allowing citizens with disabilities to participate with independence for the first time. And this is a case in the Brazilian Congress, is the law with the biggest participation of the civil society. Because of this, when you asked about the participation in the legacy to the subjects of human rights, I think the strength of the civil society make my participation as a parliamentary much easier. Additionally, I am working to promote the ratification of the Inter-American Convention on the Protection of the Human Rights of Elderly People and the International Convention on the Protection of the Rights of Migrant Workers and members of their families. I must mention the evaluation of Brazil's first national action plan for women, peace, and security, which values women's roles in conflict prevention, resolution, maintenance, and peace consolidation. And as our team is running short, I am available to continue this conversation and exchange experience of our parliamentary basis on the UN Human Rights Mechanism. And one thing I think it's very important also to mention is that we are working and we are, sorry, I lost something very important, that we work for the ratification of the Kigali Amendment and an international agreement to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, demonstrating Brazil's commitment to combating climate change. And this is all. And thank you very, very much for this opportunity and this opportunity to meet all those important people in the field of human emergency and humanitarian rights all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing this with us. I still see Ms. Patase. Is she with us? I don't see her on my screen. Ms. Patase, would you like to come in?
Bonjour, je suis Marie-Christiane Patassé, troisième vice-présidente de l'Assemblée nationale de la République centrafricaine. Comme vous le savez, j'ai participé au rapport des activités pour la République centrafricaine. Et comme vous le savez, la République centrafricaine a traversé des moments très difficiles. Et il y a beaucoup de femmes, ils ont beaucoup souffert. Et la jeunesse et les enfants aussi. Et le rapport, là, nous sommes en train de faire un travail avec le gouvernement pour la sensibilisation, pour qu'il y ait la paix et les droits humains, surtout sur les droits humains. Et par rapport à cet rapport, on a eu beaucoup de recommandations et l'Assemblée nationale, on est en train de contrôler le gouvernement pour que cette recommandation doit être mise en place pour que la sécurité et le respect des droits humains qui est dans notre République, dans la République centrafricaine. Et je tiens absolument à remercier beaucoup la MINUSCA, les Nations Unies, qui est en train de faire un travail très remarquable, surtout du côté de sensibilisation, surtout sur les droits humains. Et nous avons un sérieux problème au niveau des arrière-pays, surtout dans les provinces. Il n'y a pas totalement la sécurité. Et le gouvernement est en train de mettre des sensibilisations avec les femmes parlementaires et nous, les parlements, ceux de commission droits humains, on est en train de voir pour faire des recommandations, pour voir pour que cette recommandation que le gouvernement de la République centrafricaine y mette que l'être humain est sacré. Et je pense le gouvernement et l'Assemblée font un travail très, très remarquable que j'ai participé. Il y a eu beaucoup d'échanges et ces échanges nous ont permis d'améliorer, d'avoir des avancées vues à la sécurité, vues aux problèmes des droits humains en République centrafricaine. Je pense que c'est clair, comme j'ai un problème de connexion, voilà en bref l'intervention que je peux intervenir. Je vous remercie. S'il y a des choses, je reviendrai vers vous. Merci.
Many thanks, Madame Patassé. I know that we're 20 minutes away from the end of our meeting, and I would really like to stick to that because I know you're very busy. But I also know that Ms. Marufova hasn't intervened yet. I know obviously Mr. Saidov has shared his experience, but I just wanted to see with you if you wanted to make any additions. Ms. Marufova, would you like to make any additions, any further
Thank you
comment?
very much thank you very much. But I not speak well in English. I understand, but I listen. Thank you very much for your speech, for your recommendations. It's very good, very nice. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. That's noted. So with that, we have 15 to 20 minutes left before we end. We have the second part and the third part. But I am also aware that with many of the comments that have been made until now, we have covered not just the first part of today's meeting, but also quite substantively bits and pieces of the second part, which is really about implementation, on which we have heard already from several of you. But now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Sophie Kilatze to also get maybe not so much of a discussion going, because we will simply not have the time to get too much into that, but to have her perspective on implementation with her personal experience being brought to bear for us. You have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks to all of the speakers who shared their very interesting and enriching experience with us. I will be very brief and just focus on one particular issue. This issue, as Rukia has mentioned in the very beginning, is the most difficult, really, to implement what was written, even to adopt the laws in sense of adopting laws, but also in regarding the budgeting, accumulating an allocation of sufficient budget, but also implementation in terms of overseeing the recommendations by the Parliament. One very interesting and important point I would like to bring here is my personal experience as the chairperson of Human Rights Committee of Georgia, to include all the recommendations which were recommended in 2017 by the Committee on the Rights of the Child in the law, which we're working on since 2016, in the end of 2016, the Code on the Rights of the Child, which was mentioned by Ms. Bayer. And this law is a very comprehensive law, together with the law on social work. Both of them create a solid basis for the child rights protection in Georgia, in our country. But for this, we used very much the recommendations which were recommended by the Committee on the Rights of the Child, many important points to bring these both laws in line with the Convention on the Rights of the Child, but also with other human rights mechanisms. We used also for these both laws the UPR recommendations, which were given to Georgia in 2015, also recently for this period of time. So both these recommendations from UPR, but first of all from CRC, were guiding for us to fulfill and to bring all the laws in line with the international obligations of Georgia. And that's why these both laws are very much recognized by the international organizations like United Nations, UNICEF, Council of Europe, etc., etc. So we have very good experience about this. But I must confess, it was very difficult because we had several I would say in general, two groups in the society. The one group was very liberally minded, so to say. Another one was very conservatively minded, and they had huge clash. And the Parliament of Georgia and the government of Georgia, we were somewhere in between, because you are parliamentarians, you understand me, it is also electorate, which we need to take care of as a parliamentarian. So it was a very difficult process. We had really huge issues with both groups, but at the end, we could bring the right messages to society. So it helped us, on the one hand, to just pay attention on the electorate, but on the other hand, not to compromise the human rights, and in particular, in this concrete case, the child rights. At the end, we had this successful experience. Another very important and also very difficult part was not only the adoption of the law as an implementation of the recommendations which were received from different human rights mechanisms from the UN, but also to implement those laws also. And it is still very challenging But I think the parliament and the government together, they need to overcome those difficulties, especially when it comes to budgeting. Because what I have noticed, not only for my country, but also in absolute majority of the countries, once something emerging comes, like it was COVID, for example, first of all, our human rights are the target to cut the budget which is allocated for human rights. So, and of course, including child rights. And in this part, I think Parliament has crucial role not to let anyone to cut the budget, which is crucially important for human rights, but to find out the ways how human rights can be promoted, because in emerging situations, especially human rights, from my point of view, needs to be on the first place because of its significant importance. Also the oversight part of the implementation of the recommendations. It's also very difficult. Sometimes parliaments lack the capacity to have comprehensive information, and MPs, they need to deal with many different issues. So this is a very challenging part and very challenging point, and it depends also on enthusiastic MPs who are committed to do more and more, and sometimes also beyond the capacities, but it is possible. So this is what we did also in Georgia in order to ensure that all the recommendations, or almost all the recommendations on which the government and the parliament agreed, that they are fulfilled, and that the parliament has a leading role in this oversight part. I really do not want to take much of your time, so I will stop here, and if there are questions, then later on maybe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sophie. With the 10 minutes that we have left, what I would like to suggest is that if there are 2 or 3 comments, or either reactions to what you've just said, or there are comments from countries, from persons about how they have seen implementation in their countries with regard to the reports that have come out following their participation in those national delegations, I think that would be very useful. I see 2 hands that are up. Maybe with that in mind, I suggest we take those 2 questions, if you can be as brief as possible, and then move very quickly on to the third part of our meeting. So first of all, Ms. Al-Helaisi from Saudi Arabia, you have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I think that the comment that I'm going to make is going to be a comment that probably encompasses all those 3 parts of the 3 sessions that we need to discuss. I'm going to probably address the elephant in the room, something that very rarely we discuss between us, and I think it is something that we do need to discuss. The question of double standards with regards to human rights. Why is it that certain countries need to abide by certain laws, whereas others can get away with literally murder with regards to human rights? So my question really is, the discussion should be around the validity, the effectiveness of international organizations for the implementations of the human rights issues, as well as other issues, obviously, but definitely with regards to women and children. And I don't want to make this a political issue, but we can just look at what is happening both in the Middle East and in Europe to see that whatever we are discussing from the comfort of our chairs with regards to our own nations do not apply to other nations. So I'm just trying to address the validity, the importance of these organizations, and how can we really see them being implemented without double standards to all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I think that's an absolutely valid point, and something that we have to be mindful of as an international organization. But also, this is also a big challenge. I can tell you that. Miss Mara Gabrilli from Brazil.
Thank you for the floor. I just want to make a comment regarding Mrs. Sophia from Georgia that she was telling, because in my presentation I said that I have ensured that all approved projects and laws are inclusive, but it's not the reality. It's not, I am working, but sometimes I have to work to avoid throwback, and the implementation is not easy. So we have the law, but the second moment is the implementation. And sometimes we have throwback. And when we talk about accessibility for persons with disability, for example, we need wheelchairs, we need screen readers, we need like hearing aids, and we need accessibility on the streets, on the cities. So it's something that we have to work in a mainstream way, but always fighting for implementation. This is not easy. So I didn't want to leave the image Brazil is perfect. No, we try hard, and sometimes we have to fight against throwback. I just want to make this compliment.
Thank you very much. I see two hands, and I would really consider those two hands as the last speakers before I give back the floor to Sophie. So I have Dr. Jacques and Ms. Bayer.
Merci beaucoup une fois de plus. La République du Tchad est à sa 4e participation cette année et on a noté des progrès assez très sensibles puisque avec l'appui du Parlement, mon pays a voté la loi qui met en place la Commission nationale des droits de l'homme. Un plan d'action de mise en œuvre des recommandations a été élaboré. Un comité interministériel de suivi de la mise en œuvre de ce plan d'action a été créé. Et nous suivons à partir dans ma commission, la commission chargée des droits humains et la Commission nationale des droits humains, nous suivons de près la mise en œuvre des différentes recommandations, ce qui a fait que cette année, lors de notre passage à Genève, 242 recommandations ont été adoptées, 234 ont été acceptées par le gouvernement, 8 sont notées. Et nous étions au niveau du Parlement très regardant en ce qui concerne la budgétisation surtout pour la Commission nationale chargée des droits humains. Nous regardons de telle sorte que des moyens conséquents soient mis à la disposition de cette Commission nationale chargée des droits humains pour travailler de telle sorte que la situation des droits des humains soit véritablement améliorée au niveau de mon pays. Donc peut-être que compte tenu du temps, je peux m'arrêter là. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur. Alors maintenant, je passe la parole à Madame Baya.
Thank you again. First of all, unfortunately, I won't be able to attend the part 3. I have to leave. I have something to attend to, but I do want to comment on several issues that Ms. Sophia mentioned. And as she rightly spoke about the relationship between the parliament and government, is that in our situation, the legislative framework is there and it's very well written out. And now we're having this sort of the challenges when it comes to implementing it and when it comes to having this conversation with the government. And budgeting is the right word and the main challenge at this point. So to address this issue, first we have to find out what is the budget allocated for the human rights and for the child's rights, because we don't have this specific number, because we might know sort of the sum number of how much is allocated, but we don't know how much is adopted and how much is actually there for children or for human rights. So therefore, in 2024, the Council, in cooperation with the World Vision of Georgia, and we are very much, very closely cooperate with this organization. We had a sitting and a meeting with the State Care Agency, and we updated the monitoring plan and indicators for child welfare implementation and child rights codes and approved it on our council meeting. And these indicators are very specific, and we just went through it today, and I was very much impressed how well written and well structured the document and the indicators are. So it will give us, at the end of the 2024, it will give us the exact understanding of what is the budget allocated, how much is it, and we can then afterwards send out recommendations and be more involved in the initiatives and in the recommendations when it comes to allocating budget for child rights. So that's the comment I wanted to add. It's been a very mind-filling and very mind-opening discussion and very insightful. And so thank you very much. And I wish you all success and all the best. Thank you again and have a good evening. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Baya. Our suggestion is really to try to wrap up in the next 5 minutes or so that the third session is not so much a session that we'll keep this going as part of our conversation with you. And that said, I see that Ms. Pervais from Pakistan and also Mr. Saidov would like to intervene. Could I ask both of you to be brief, if at all possible, to sum up what you would like to say in a minute?
Thank you very much. Yes, I would say that budgeting is very important. And it is that we should know what budgets we have, because we have some very good legislation in Pakistan. But as far as the implementation is concerned, it is weak. It is weak. And it is one reason is because there are no separate funds allocated to it. So we should make sure that we should look at the human rights from the perspective and from the human right lens. The budget should be seen so that there are specific funds allocated. And one thing, I don't want to be political as my sister was, but I have always, all my life advocated for human rights. But at the moment, I am very disheartened, very discouraged, and I really don't want to work on the human rights issues because of what I see happening in the world, in the Middle East, in Kashmir, in Europe. Actually, I don't feel like advocating anymore for human rights, because we are there struggling against all odds to work and come up to the human rights UN Charter. But on the other hand, we see nothing happening. So I am really sorry, but I am one person who's going to withdraw from the human rights work, because I am not happy and I'm very distressed and I'm under tremendous pressure within myself. So I apologize for this outburst, but that is the situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pervais, for sharing that with us. Mr. Saidov, you have the last word before giving back the floor to Ms. Sophie Kiladze.
Thank you, Roger. First of all, I want to say many thanks for organization. It's a very important, useful event. I have one. It's very concrete suggestion. Maybe we must prepare it and adopted guidelines on participation of parliamentarians in country delegations to UN human rights bodies. I repeat, guidelines on participation of parliamentarians in country delegations to UN human rights bodies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Saidov. And that sounds like that should be a very realistic recommendation that we can take forward. Ms. Farah Said, just a very brief remark. Microphone, please.
Oui, rebonjour. Je vous remercie de m'avoir donné la parole. Et c'est juste pour expliquer que l'Assemblée nationale de Djibouti poursuivra à la participation à l'EPI prochain ou à la CEDEF, mais également aux autres mécanismes internationaux de droits de l'homme. Et nous nous engageons à mettre en place un suivi de recommandations, une sorte de comité d'évaluation où la CNDH, c'est-à-dire Djibouti est déjà engagé, il y a déjà le comité national des droits de l'homme qui existe déjà, le ministère de la Justice et des droits de l'homme et la commission des droits humains parlementaire puissent travailler ensemble et se mettre d'accord et pour aussi améliorer les conditions et tous les textes comportant ou exigeant les droits humains. Et je tiens aussi à remercier l'Union interparlementaire qui soutient énormément l'Assemblée nationale dans ses actions de participation et de contribution aux mécanismes internationaux des droits. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup. Je passe la parole à Sophie pour, en quelque sorte, vos conclusions.
Thank you very much. And thanks all of you for your very interesting intervention for this second session. Unfortunately, because we do not have time, I will refrain myself from making any in-depth, detailed comments about your intervention. But I think this event, this webinar, has proved once again how important it is that the parliamentarians are a part of the delegations in human rights mechanisms, but also doing the important work in the field. And these both issues then how much it can really bring as tangible results to human rights and different vulnerable groups. So thank you very much, and thanks once again IPU to making this important event.
Thank you very much. So as we're running out of time, we're almost close to 10 minutes beyond the scheduled time. We won't do the third part, but just to say that, and I think many of you know this already, the IPU is very actively engaging with parliaments to help them become a bigger part of this UN Human Rights Mechanisms reporting procedure, whether it's the UN Human Rights Council, whether it's the UN Human Rights Treaty bodies. We have a very solid relationship with the UN Human Rights Council. We have a very solid relationship with the CEDAW committee, with the CRC, hopefully also with some of the other treaty bodies. This is happening with the Committee on Migrant Workers' Rights, hopefully as well with also the election of Mr. Saidov as a member to the UN Human Rights Committee. We can also establish a stronger link there with the UN Human Rights Committee. So this is work in progress, and the IPU systematically informs the parliaments of the countries that are being reviewed by these different bodies of that examination, and also we remain in contact with the parliaments once that examination has taken place. So we are certainly there to accompany you to become a part of the reporting procedure, and maybe most importantly, to also facilitate you in your work to help ensure implementation of the UN human rights recommendations that are adopted. One particular way in which we're trying to do this is by making available what is called a parliamentary self-assessment toolkit to parliaments, which allows parliaments to sort of assess for themselves the extent to which human rights are known within Parliament and are also integrated into existing parliamentary processes and structures. This toolkit is available to you. I think several of you already know about this toolkit, and in fact, with the Parliament of Djibouti, but also with the Parliament of the Central African Republic, we are having continuous discussions about how this can be used. Of course, we would like to have this conversation be expanded as well to other parliaments. So here too, we are at your disposal to take this discussion further. And of course, we would like to stay in contact with you because we have also come to realize through this discussion with you that you are also human rights champions, great examples of parliamentary engagement with these UN human rights mechanisms. And I can tell you, I've been doing this work for quite a number of years, and I can tell you how difficult it is to bring together a group of members of parliament who have this kind of experience. So what I think would also be very useful for us to engage with you individually so that you can also share these experiences with parliamentarians who do not know about these UN human rights mechanisms, who do not know about the role that they can play. So also for that reason, we really hope to be in contact and to remain in contact with you. With those words, I would like to thank the presenters, both presenters who participated in this program. I would like to thank the participants, the members of parliament who participated in this meeting and shared their personal experiences, which was really wonderful for us, very enriching. I would like to thank my colleagues, in particular, Ilia, Giulio and Matilde, who put this together. And I know also that this is always a very time-consuming exercise. I want to thank the interpreters. And as I said, we hope to continue this discussion with you. So we hope that you will also remain available for this as we go along. So with that, I wish to thank you very much for your participation and your attention. Thank you.